This happened a few years ago, a couple days before Christmas. It was the weekend, and my mother and I were doing our usual weekend things, ordering food and watching creepy TV movies. We had just ordered the food, and not too long after that, we heard a knock at the door. We both looked at each other, and knowing there was no way that the delivery was here, it was way too quick. My mother answered the door, and there was a woman standing there who we'd never seen before. She asked if someone in particular was there. My mom said no and shut the door. I couldn't hear what the woman said because of the TV, but my mother said the woman asked for Gloria. If you'd come this far, you are probably wondering how this is a creepy story. Well, let me tell you. My grandmother's name was Gloria. She never lived at our house, and we'd been the only people living in this house for decades. So, it's not like we just moved in, and someone was looking for a recent occupant. Now for the weird part, my grandmother had been dead for about 15 years at the point. I picked up my phone to text my cousin about it, and it suddenly dawned on me that my grandmother passed away around Christmas time. My cousin then reminded me that she actually died that day. The same day this random woman came to my house and asked for Gloria. I like to think that was my grandmother stopping by to say hello. I miss you. Drop by anytime. My husband and I were newly married and were searching for an apartment in Long Beach, California. One we came upon was on a very nice street in a converted older home. There were established trees around the yard, and the landscaping was neatly trimmed. The landlord greeted us at the driveway and told us she would show us around. All was well with me so far. I really liked the locations and appearance of the outside area. The apartment was on the second floor. The minute I started up the stairs, I felt very strange and uneasy. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I saw blood smeared all along the wall to my left. I closed my eyes again, and when I opened them, there was no blood visible. I didn't say anything about what happened to me, and we continued to view the apartment. After the end of the tour, my husband took me aside and said he didn't like the apartment and we should keep looking. After a long day of looking for an apartment, we decided to stop for coffee and discuss the places we looked at. During the discussion, my husband said the second floor apartment in the old house looked good on the outside, but he didn't like the inside. I asked what he didn't like, so he proceeded to tell me that the staircase gave him a creepy feeling and that he thought something bad had happened there. I told him what had happened to me while we were there. We stared at each other for a few seconds and decided then and there that we made the right decision. A couple of years ago, in the winter, I was in my room, sitting by my desk with the window open. We lived in the middle of the woods, with no close neighbors. My window faced thick woods, with no hiking trails, just old forest with a couple remains of old houses. It's kinda dangerous. There are lots of old uncovered wells and spiky metal wire around. It was like minus 25 degrees at least, and pitch black at night. Suddenly, I heard humming and heavy breathing coming from the woods, like very close to my house. Whatever it was started singing, just loud enough for me to hear. I couldn't realize the language, but it was 100% a male voice. Then, I heard a very fast footsteps going further away from our house. I couldn't fucking think of any animal. It could have been something that wasn't human. We went to see if we could find tracks the next day, but there was nothing there. It's possible we just didn't find them. The woods are thick, and walking in deep snow is exhausting. I'll never know who or what it was. A few years ago, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment. It was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s. I'd been there for a few months. When I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom, I saw something strange. A wooden board, which had covered a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space, lay fractured in two pieces on the ground. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure, I thought. I emailed pictures to the landlord, asking if anyone had been there. She said, please call me as soon as you are able to. And she explained that her last two tenants had said the same thing happened. She promised to replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night, around 4 a.m. My body was covered in goosebumps. It felt like someone was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard a dragging sound coming from above my bed. It was as if someone was pulling a sack of potatoes. Convinced someone was up there. There is no way an animal could make that sound. After 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to turn on the light, armed myself with a cricket bat, and walked to the bathroom. That's when I saw that the new board covering the hole was broken in two. I felt sick. The dragging sound had stopped, but I heard the whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like kids' voices, and I could hear one sentence repeated over and over. "It's your turn." I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. It was 5 a.m. and dark outside. I watched TV to try to unwind. Then a fuse blew. My pet, whom I kept in the kitchen, never made a sound at night. I'd never heard him make those noises. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, sat in my car, and waited there until the sun came up. When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was open, but I figured I might have forgotten to close it when I ran out. I went to the kitchen to check my pet, but he wasn't in his cage. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked to the bathroom, I heard splashing. My pet was half drowned in the toilet. I took them out, washed him, and dried him. I was so confused. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. She said, "Oh, you heard the whispering too." I stayed there for 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling moved. Although I don't live there, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with her about some of the stuff that's been going on there. Forget it. It's their problem now. I and my partner were working in a community at 2 a.m. and it was pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing. I was in the driver's seat and she was in the passenger seat. I woke up to the muffled voice, but I thought my partner was talking. I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I distinctly heard the male voice say, "Oh my God, am I dying?" followed by a few seconds of heavy breathing. I and my partner sat up straight and looked back into the patient compartment, where it sounded like the voice had come from. Things were quiet for a couple of seconds. Then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator and a hiss, as if it was leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought a transient might have climbed in while we were asleep, so we opened the door. No one was there. I checked the oxygen bottles. Neither was open. We couldn't sleep much after that. One night, when I was 10, I was woken up by my bedroom door, followed by someone sitting on my bed. It wasn't my mom. I found an eyeless boy. He had black empty sockets, about my age, sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand, and it was a little box. I was startled, but reached out. He pulled back. I reached again and said, "Give it." Then I blinked, and when I reopened my eyes, he was gone. But I could still see the imprint, for he'd sat on my bed. Fast forward 5 years. My friend came over to do homework. After she finished, she took a nap while she was waited for her parents. When they arrived, I tried waking her up. She opened her eyes suddenly, looking up at the corner when the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there and went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to full consciousness and I explained what she'd done. She looked haunted. Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there, in a Spider-Man pose, staring at me. I freaked out and told her my story about the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years. I was with the same girl, and we had a 2-year-old. We were living in my parents' house. My daughter started waking up at the same time every night, and she'd talk. After a while, I noticed she had almost the same conversation every night. I asked her once whom she was talking to. She said, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his mommy." My daughter's nightly conversations continued until we got our own place later that year. In college, I had a friend who claimed to be a ghost magnet. One night, we made a plan to explore the attic in one of the campus buildings that they had found accidentally unlocked in an old Victorian mansion. To get to the attic, you had to go up 2 flights of the servant stairs, then up another smaller set of stairs to get to a landing with a doorway on either side of it. When we got there and looked up the landing, I saw a shadow figure standing right above us, leaning over the railing and looking down. We both looked at each other and without a word bolted back down to the main floor. Once we caught our breath, remember my friend saying, "I don't think that man was alive."